Thank you. It's so great to be here with all of you. This weekend has already been so amazing. I've been meeting so many people, some that I've known apparently since I was like wee high, that keep coming up and saying to me, the last time I saw you, you were 6 years old and I used to babysit you. And it's just really amazing to reconnect, and just with so many of you that Mum and Dad have visited over the years. And I know a lot of you have heard a lot of our journey, a lot of our story from Mum and Dad, and you've come up and said to me, we feel like we already know you, we've heard so much. And so just honour Mum and Dad, and just for being open and sharing our journey with you all. And it's just such a privilege to be here with you guys. And so I'm changing gear a little bit. I'm not going to talk quite as fast. And that was really awesome sharing. But I just really want to share from my heart, and have a couple of confessions. When Dad first called me up to say, hey, I want you to share for 10 minutes at the conference on your passion for adoption and orphan care. And I was like, sure, Dad, I'll do that. And inside I'm thinking, oh my word, I don't want to get up in front of all these amazing people, and just people that I really look up to, and share. And what do I have to share? And I know that there's people in this room that have adopted also, and there's people out here that are doing amazing work with orphan care. And I'm just one of those people amongst that. And so I put that aside and said, okay, I'm going to do it. Dad's asked, I can do this, I'm going to do this. And then I kind of put it away, and then came to last week, and, we're leaving to come out of the country, and I have 5 kids, and I'm a pediatric nurse. I work full time, and, there's a lot of logistics that goes to leaving your 5 children at home for 8 days. And it's Friday and we're leaving Saturday, and I haven't packed, and I still haven't even thought about, what am I going to share with you all, and how am I going to condense everything I have in my heart for adoption into 10 minutes. So I sat down, put on some worship music, some Hillsong, sat on the deck, made some tea, started to get into the presence of God. I don't know how you all prepare for when you have to share, but set the mood. And I went online, and I went on to a video that Rick Warren has this 8-minute message he speaks on orphan care, and it's great. It's to the point. It speaks everything I really believe in my heart. It's always really spoken to me. So I refreshed on that, and then it dawned on me, hey, this video is 8 minutes. We could watch the video, and then I could share for 2 minutes, and that would be great. And yay, that would be done. And so I had that, and then I just had this little check in my spirit that I should call Dad and just say, kind of run it by, is there a way to play a video? But really what I'm asking is it okay for me to play a video? And Dad reinforced a little niggle in my head saying, no, we don't want to hear from Rick Warren for 8 minutes, we want to hear from you, and that's why we asked. So I was like, so anyway, I went back, and really I'm saying this just to set the scene, because I said, okay, I hear what you're saying. And so I just sat down and just sat before God and prayed, and just started journaling and just started writing. And I just feel like as I was writing, God was just speaking to me, and what was flowing out of me is what I know he wanted me to share. So I am going to read some to you, and I've had some flack from my sisters because they're like, you can't get up there and read your notes. And I'm like, but part of that is just because I know I want to keep to the point, and I'm hugely passionate, and so is Chris, about adoption and orphan care. And I could sit one-on-one with any of you and talk for hours about that passion in our hearts. But I just really want to condense into 10 minutes how we got here and our journey. And just my prayer is that maybe a little seed would be placed in some of your hearts, because I think it is something that is truly on God's heart, and something that, as a church and as a COTN family, I know it's something that we really do value, and we already are really acting in actively, and that's just a pleasure to be in a family where that's already something that's on everybody's heart. I love the theme of our conference, Compelled by Love, because that couldn't sum up more the catalyst that launched Chris and I into our adoption journey. And it really does come from a place of love. And for me, I feel like adoption always has to be motivated by love. We can see pictures, we can get strong-armed into maybe adoption, we can feel like we have to do it because there's orphans out there. But if it's not motivated by love, it's going to fail. And it's not an easy journey. I feel like you have to be called to adopt, and it is something that you need to be willing to be open to hear from God about, but it's not something you should enter into just off the cuff, and it should never be something you're strong-armed into, but something that God really places in your heart, and it is out of a heart of love for the true orphan. And then if you step out in that and God has called you, then he is going to hold your hand through the hard times. And I know there's some families in here that I've been talking to, and it's you guys relate, and I can relate, that it's it's not always an easy journey, and you need need God there with you in it, but it is so essential that we as Christians are willing to step up and do it. So for me, adoption was something I knew I wanted to be a part of my story from as long as I can remember. When I was in my early 20s, I was I don't know how many of the other ladies have done this, or maybe some of the gentlemen, but I was writing a list of the things I desired in my future husband. And adoption, a willingness to want to adopt was something on the top of that list. It was right up there with extremely handsome and wanting to travel. So where's my husband? Yeah, there's Chris back there. So I was very grateful God answered all those prayers and those things on the top of my list. But he did bring a man along into my life that was equally as passionate about adoption. And it was something that was always at the very beginning of our marriage. It was something that we talked about. It was something very early on that before we even got married that we discussed, that it was a way we wanted to grow our family. For us, adoption was a choice. It was a first choice. It wasn't something that we were just going to fall into. We knew at some point, we knew we'd probably have biological children too, but at some point God was going to lead us to adopt. It wasn't something that was just going to happen because of infertility or we just couldn't have kids. For us, we were going to choose to adopt in our family. And no matter how God brings you to the place of adoption, if God does lead you that way, whether it is through infertility or you choosing to adopt, it's always God's first plan. It's not a backup plan. And I think that's something God really spoke to us, is that the care of orphan and adoption is his first choice. It's not a backup plan. It's not just a second thing that happens. So whether it's because you couldn't have children and God leads you down this road, however he takes you to that point, it is a first choice. And I think it's really important to know that, even for that child, that this was not, you just didn't fall into it. It wasn't a backup plan that they came into your family. God chose it. It was his first choice and his plan for their life. To me, this reflects a lot on God's heart for us. He chose to adopt us into his family, and with that comes all his blessings and inheritance of being his sons and daughters. He didn't adopt us out of an obligation, but because of his love for us and his desire to want to have a relationship with us. The root of adoption is love. Natural adoption is the same. It is not a second choice or a backup plan. It is a reflection of here on earth how God adopted us into his kingdom. And I think natural adoption is such a beautiful reflection of God's adoption of us into his kingdom, and you cannot get away from the parallels, it's just all there. I know we're not all called to adopt, but we are all called to take care of the orphan in some way. And that's a huge passion for Chris and I and for us, is just to get that out there to the body of Christ and to the people around us, is yes, you're not all going to be called to adopt, but we are all called to take care of the orphan. We all know this scripture, James 1:27, religion that God our Father accepts us pure and faultless is this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this. So he's not talking about anything else here. He's not talking about your sermons, your tithing, all the other things, the worship, all the other things. Religion that is pure and faultless is that we take care of orphans and widows, and he's going to hold us accountable for that, And so it has to be something that our churches are involved in to some level. And as a COTN ministry and a family, I'm so blessed that it's such a part of, what we're already doing. So I know I'm speaking to the choir on some of this. But orphan care, just very briefly, orphan care isn't just adoption. There's so much more that we can be involved in. And one of those big things is supporting the families around you that are adopting. And we've been so blessed in our community, in our church, and in our family, and where we've come out of, that we've just had people that have surrounded us, have supported us through it, because you need support. It's not an easy journey. And there's families here in this place, and there's families in your churches that have adopted, and just encourage you. Cook them a meal, offer the babysitting, financially sow into them, anything you can do, because they have stepped out in God and done something, and they need the support of their family around them. There are days that are hard, and that having that support in that family is huge. And I'm so blessed to come from that church family and that family that has supported us every step of the way. I don't know how Chris and I would have done it without our natural family support and our church family. So I just honor you guys in that, and just want to encourage you. Just a quick plug, if you want to know more about this, then go watch the Rick Warren 8-minute message, because he talks really good about that aspect of adoption. Yeah, so watch the it's 8 minutes, but it really does talk like to the heart of that, and I don't want to get off on that tangent, but there's a whole message there. So back to our story. So Chris and I married, and after 3 years, we welcomed our first son, Benjamin, into our lives. And Benjamin might show up. There you go. There's Benjamin. That's after he was born, and that's him recently. Benjamin just graduated from high school and just started at university. He's 19. The joy and love that filled our hearts for this precious little person that was created by God through us was indescribable. Everyone here that has had children knows what I mean. I think when you look into your baby's eyes for the first time, it's the closest glimpse of God's love for us that you can get. I don't know any other way to describe how God loves us than when you look into your child's eyes. Of course, he was perfect, and being the first grandchild on both sides of the family, just a little spoiled. Adoption continued to be on our hearts and in our minds, but adjusting to being first-time parents with the busyness of life, we didn't feel released yet. Almost 2 years later, we were pregnant with our second son, Ethan. Here comes Ethan. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, poor Ethan would be mortified that picture is up there, but it's the best picture I could find in the few minutes I had. The boys, of course, they were pre-Facebook, a lot of digital pictures. I'm showing my age. So yeah, the later kids, everything is online. These kids have to go through albums and find a picture and take a picture, and there we go. So that's Ethan. He's 17 now. We were thrilled, but like many of you who have had a second child, you begin to wonder how, and sometimes fear, if you will ever love this child like your first. To us, Benjamin was perfect. There was no way we could love another child, or another child could be as great as he was. But of course, as you all know, anyone here who's had a second child knows, the moment that child is placed in your arms and you look into those eyes, your heart expands and you feel like it will explode with love. It's like God does something. He just grows your heart. Some of you may remember Ethan's birth as we were hosting a COTN leadership conference where we live in Richmond, Virginia. His birth was easy, but quickly afterwards I found myself hemorrhaging and fighting for my life. I know many of the COTN family, including some of you in this room, were praying for us. I want you to know, and everybody out there, that we felt those prayers. Although it was an extremely scary and stressful situation, we felt the peace in that hospital room and knew God was in control. We were being held up by everybody's prayers, and it meant so much to Chris and I. Eventually, I was taken to the operating room. Afterwards, I was in the recovery with Chris, and he had just told me that we would no longer have more biological children. We looked at each other with tears and knew right then that God had prepared our hearts for this moment when he placed that seed for adoption so many years ago before we were married. We didn't know how, when, or from where, but we did know that our family was still growing. So that was our first journey into adoption. We knew we'd chosen way back that we were going to adopt. We just didn't know how it was going to fit in. And then we just knew that that seed that he had placed carried us through this time that was could be extremely hard. God just sort of placed this. I added this a little bit yesterday, but I just felt like God wanted to say to some of you here, and this is not really related to adoption, but I feel like there's seeds that God has placed in some people in this room's hearts a long time ago, like the way he placed adoption into our hearts, but you haven't seen the fruit of it yet, or you haven't been released in it yet, or you haven't seen that door open yet. And I just feel like God's saying to some people in here, and you can receive this however you will, but that it's still coming, that he placed the seed, but you're going to see it grow, and you're going to see it birth in his timing. You just got to wait and hold on to that. So whoever that's for, or whoever, a few people take that. So it seemed, I'm probably past 10 minutes, but but I'm, Dad's daughter, so I get a few extra minutes. think I could fill 10 minutes, so here we go. So it seemed logical to us that we would wait 6 to 12 months and then start the process of adoption. Just, you have your plan. But like before, life was busy. We were adjusting to being a family of 4 and the challenges of everyday life. And as much as we wanted to adopt, and as frustrating as it felt at times, we didn't feel released. Then God took us on a journey, a time of heartache, healing, and spiritual and personal growth. It was one of the most stretching times of our lives, but also a time of discovering God's faithfulness in ways we had never experienced. It was a time of preparation for what was to come. Sometimes when you're in the tough times, you don't know what's God doing. You don't see the end, and so you're in the trenches, and it's hard. But coming out the other side, we now look back and we know God was preparing us for these adoptions that were coming. Things began to settle down, and we were where we belonged. We loved our family of 4, our house, dog, and cat. We were in our home church with COTN. Things were good. We were serving God and caring for our family and enjoying life. And like God often does when things seem smooth and calm, we then began to feel restless. There was a stirring in our hearts, and suddenly our family did not feel complete. The dream that God had put in our hearts to adopt so long ago was being stirred up. God was breathing life on it, and we knew now was the time. Did we feel ready? No. Did we have the finances? No. But our hearts were consumed with the desire to bring a child into our home that had no mummy or daddy to love them. Suddenly, everywhere we looked, we were bombarded by things that related to adoption. It's like when you buy a new car, and then you drive down the street and you see that car everywhere. That's how we felt about adoption. We bumped into people randomly that had adopted. We met people that had been adopted. We met people that gave to orphans. We saw billboards for foster care and adoption. It just was everywhere, and we knew God was saying, now, here's your time. There is no way I can go through the details of each of our adoptions, as that would take way longer than 10 minutes. But I want to summarize just a little bit. But after much prayer and research and God speaking to us, God led us to China and to adopt from China. You can put them up. There we go. Yeah. After reading about the plight of baby girls in China, our hearts were overwhelmingly filled with love and sadness for them. The image of mothers and fathers abandoning their baby girls on doorsteps, under trees, or by city gates, hoping they would be found by someone before they died, was at times breathtakingly sad. It is hard to describe the emotions that Chris and I felt and what God was doing in our heart. The only way I can describe it is that it was as if we were getting a glimpse of the pain God feels when he sees his lost children abandoned and hurting in this world, and he's standing there with arms open wide saying, "Come to me." We wanted to stand there with arms open wide and say, "Come to us." Our first adoption was Mia, the little one on this end. Here, that was Mia. Sorry. I got lost. Our first adoption was Mia. She was 11 months and had a cleft lip and palate. 2 years later, God led us to Lily. She was 2.5. Lily's in the middle down the bottom. And she only weighed 12 pounds when we adopted her. She had a serious heart defect and significant developmental delays. Finally, 4 years ago, we adopted Cole. Here on the end, sweetie pie. He was 5 years old. He has some learning delays, and we have subsequently found he suffered a traumatic brain injury when he was younger. Mia is now 11, Lily is 9, and Cole is 9. When each of them was placed in our arms, the most amazing thing happened. Just like with our second son, our hearts expanded. Our love for them was no different or any less than our biological children. Just like when God adopted us into his family, all that is his became ours. So in the same way, all that is us became part of them, including siblings, grandparents, aunts, uncles. I promise I wouldn't get emotional. Cousins, church family, and community. They were no longer orphans because of God's love for them. I'm just going to conclude here, but I wanted to read you a statement that Chris and I speak over our kids, and it is for them, but I also feel like for some of you, God is speaking this, saying this to you. "We will always love you and care for you as if you are born of our flesh. All that we have is your inheritance. You are not our second choice, but our first. We choose you. We want you. We love you. No matter what comes with you, and no matter what trials we face. You are now named, belong, and are a part. Your title is no longer orphan, but son and daughter. Each of you was birthed in our hearts a long time ago. You have and always will be loved.